Welcome to the latest Instant Reaction podcast. The Seahawks have beaten the San Francisco 49ers 37 points to 27. It was a huge game. Coming into it, I said it was probably the biggest game of the season. The Seahawks had to win this one. They couldn't afford to drop to 0-2 in the division. And then you see the inactive list before the game, and it's a huge list of key players that were needed. And I've got to be honest, Robbie, that I was even more concerned before the game, seeing that list of inactive players. And then the first few drives, with the Seahawks really struggling on offense on a day when Wilson was going to have to carry the team, it felt I got even more concerned. But it was all for nothing in the end because the Seahawks played fantastically well for the most part. There was just that blip at the end on the defense with Nick Mullen driving for what felt like 1,000 yards in the fourth quarter. But apart from that, everything else was so good. A crucial win. I said that I'd be very happy to come on and admit that I was wrong if the Seahawks won, and they did, and I was horribly wrong. Over to you, Robbie, for your reaction to that game.
I don't know if I'm more excited about the Seahawks winning or just the fact that you were wrong, Rob. I don't know. No, a solid win. We really needed it. And, I credit to the defense, man. They came out and played well. And, we said in our podcast earlier that we really needed to put the pressure on Jimmy and kind of rattle his cage a little bit. And it seemed like we did that. And I know he went out injured and whatnot. And I don't know if he was injured previously, but he seemed to be struggling there. So defense came out. We got a lot of pressure there. The beginning of the game was rough, and I was worried we were going to get outcoached by Kyle Shanahan again. But at the end of the day, that's a comfortable win for me. I was really happy with it. And you look at it, just how the day went. The Rams lost to the Dolphins. The Vikings beat the Packers, and then right now you just see that the Saints beat the Bears. So this is all playing really well for the Seahawks right now, and going forward, we just need to keep on winning. We've got the driver's seat for that number one seed.
Yeah, I hope the Rams are going to play this way when they play the Seahawks in a couple of weeks. Tua Tagovailoa threw for 93 yards today, and the Dolphins won handsomely against the Rams. It'd be great if they could play this way in a few weeks' time. In terms of, positives and negatives, there are a lot of positives to talk about today, Robbie. Russell Wilson bats his creative best. I think the touchdown to, I think it was DJ Dallas who caught it in the end zone, the way that he danced away from pressure and found his guy, the way that he did a great job finding the matchups with DK Metcalf. Could easily have had another touchdown or two. He was very close to getting one to DK again at the end, and one to Tyler Lockett as well. Wilson back to his best. DK Metcalf was practically unstoppable. The Niners had absolutely no answer to Metcalf. And, it just seemed like every time they looked his way, it ended up in a fantastic play for the Seahawks. And, the one thing I have to say, Robbie, is they should never, ever have a game again when DK Metcalf only has 2 or 3 targets like they had last week. They have to have a plan to get the ball in his hands. With that first touchdown, for me, that changed the game almost in a way, because the Seahawks were doing nothing on offense. And then it's just, they find DK with there, and he comes across the field and then up and scores that touchdown, and it just seemed to energize everybody. So you've got to find a way to get the ball in his hands. Bobby Wagner was superb, fantastic. I think 11 tackles, a couple of sacks. I think it was something like 3 TFLs and 4 quarterback hits. That's an $18 million performance, and he's not had one of those for a while. So he really needed to step up. There was a few more critics this week about Bobby Wagner. Brock and Salt dedicated a whole section of their podcast to how poorly he was playing, and he had to answer the call, and he did. And I think also there's, it's kind of like, as I said on the blog, this kind of ragtag bunch of characters here who were like filling in. You've got DJ Reed coming from nowhere. You've got Ryan Neal still there. You've got, a tight end rushing the passer. You've got, Jordan Brooks, the rookie's there. You've got Trey Flowers having a muck in because Griffin's out injured. Everybody, just a bunch of guys that, some sort of passive fans might not have heard of going into the season, all came together to put the Seahawks into a winning position. So I think you have to say, given what was at stake, given the injuries, this was a highly impressive and fantastic win.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, some of the positives, obviously Bobby played out of his mind today. I mean, you're right. 3 tackles for losses, 4 QB hits, 2 sacks, and 11 tackles on the day. 6 solo, by the way. And yeah, he played awesome. So he needed it, and I'm really glad that he came out. And a pissed off Bobby Wagner is a good thing. Unless he's mad at you. I'm going to give you a quick story, Rob. I met Bobby Wagner and Earl Thomas one time, and I was interviewing them, and it was during the Cam Chancellor holdout, and I asked them about Cam Chancellor, and Bobby Wagner looked at me and said, "You don't ask me about that," and literally it scared me. But just talk to Earl. Earl was fine. Bobby wouldn't talk to me the rest of that. So, anyways, it's great to have Bobby pissed off unless he's mad at you. And I really like DJ Reed, man. He came out of nowhere and played. He played really well, and I was excited about him. I remember when we snagged him off the 49ers practice squad, and just there was a lot of hype around him. And another thing I'm going to mention, another positive, his stats don't really show it, but Alton Robinson needs more snaps. Okay, he plays the run well. He can get a little bit of pressure on the quarterback. He should be playing more than Benson Mayoa, or at least splitting the times. There's no way that guy gets 7 snaps a game again. He should be playing a lot more. So defensive side of the ball, thought he played really well. And who else am I forgetting? Jordan Brooks, I thought played well as well. The guy's fast. He seems like he's starting to pick it up and play. So and obviously DK, Russ, offensive side of the ball, really well. Just great all around, solid win. Super pumped about this.
I think the other big positive for me, Robbie, is the way that the Seahawks addressed the running game in terms of defending Kyle Shanahan's running game. I mean, for me, that was what perhaps even as much as Russell Wilson, the way that he played in the offense, scored points to create that pressure. I think it was the way that they defended the run. Now, when it was a close game, there was just nothing easy there. And the thing about the Shanahan offense is that it finds way, it has little wrinkles and tricks, and they get outside and they flow everybody one way and move it back the other. We've talked about this in the week, and they never got it going. I think I've got the stats here. I want to pull it up so I can speak properly about this. 52 yards on 22 carries. I mean, Jermichael Hasty, who was everybody's fantasy darling during the week, had 29 yards on 12 carries and never really got going. I mean, the Seahawks just took the run away, and I was kind of watching it. I was really impressed with the way that when you could see what the Niners were trying to do and get outside, everybody flowed. KJ Wright and Bobby Wagner were diagnosing everything superbly. I think Jordan Brooks played well, as you mentioned there, in that regard. But there were guys like Poona Ford, flying and stretching out there and getting across to the sideline. It wasn't just a case of, okay, all the big defensive linemen are going to stand in the middle and the Niners are going to get matched up 1v1 and outside. It was like, oh, they're going this way. We're going to read what they're going to do. And everybody shot out to that side, and you could see Ford getting in there, making plays. And you could see a big defensive lineman doing that, joining and clogging up those lanes. And it was such a good performance. And if they can do that against the Rams as well, they'll have a better chance of playing the Rams in a few weeks' time. So I think you have to give a lot of credit to Pete Carroll and Ken Norton. We've not said that very often this year. And also to your main defensive play callers and your Bobby Wagners and your KJ Wrights. They're doing such a good job handling that running game, because on a day like this when everybody was injured, I guarantee Kyle Shanahan wanted to shorten that game. He wanted to win with the run, and with Jimmy Garoppolo clearly not healthy, he wanted to put it on the running game, and the Seahawks took that away. So I think you have to give them massive credit for the way that they did that.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. It's great seeing them actually get in there and stop the run, even on their misdirections when they try to go the opposite way and send all the guys one way and miss, swing the guy around. We shut that down. So it was really, really great to see that we just came in with a game plan that just shut down the run and put it on Jimmy Garoppolo to beat us. And, really happy that we were able to rattle Jimmy as well as put it on him. I'm going to go ahead and kick off the negatives, Rob, because I have a couple that I want to talk about. For me, and I'm having a hard time with this one because I feel like it was his first real chance, but DJ Dallas for me, I was really disappointed. I felt like he was really timid at hitting the hole. So I'd like to see him if he's going to get more carries, hit the hole a little faster. It was there. He would stall, kind of like dance a little bit too much. I think he needs to hit the hole a little faster. There at the end, he did. He got a good run there to get that close to a first down or whatever, and ended up getting a touchdown. But I really, really want to see him hit the hole faster. And then Greg Olson, I mean, I don't know what happened today, but he just seemed like to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Like he was running wrong routes. I don't know what. I just would like to see maybe get Disley a little more involved. I don't know if Olson's just if he's tired or what the case might be. But today he just didn't seem like he really had it. So yeah, that was kind of disappointed with that.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point on DJ Dallas, and people may well say, well, you're being, I agree completely with you, and people might say you're being really harsh because he scored 2 touchdowns, and he's thrust into this starting role on a day when all the other running backs were. I mean, Penny Hart was essentially the backup running back. So I don't even think Travis Homer was. It was kind of like an emergency guy, just sort of there just in case. But you're right, he just looked so timid. I mean, when he was hitting the line. It felt like the only successful run play was when he got outside. So the Seahawks were trying to find ways to get him outside, but you can't always do that. And when at the end of the game, when you're thinking, right, just kill some clock here and run the ball and play out some time against the tired Niners defense, they couldn't do it. They were still having to throw the ball because there was nothing to get up the middle. And there was a few times where I could see on Twitter, people were going, I really miss Chris Carson. I really miss Chris Carson. And look, that's not a good sign for DJ Dallas when people are saying that. Credit to him for the touchdown catch, which, let's be right, was right after he got Russell Wilson's head taken off by completely blowing that play. And Wilson was not impressed. When he went over and apologized afterwards, Wilson gave him a bit of a death stare there and was like, yeah, okay. He was not happy with that. And he got the touchdown later on, but it's just so timid. And he wasn't pushing the pile. When he ran up the middle, he never fell forward once. He was like, as soon as he hit the pile, it was like he'd fall over and that was it. And, the Seahawks running style is to have running backs who are really tough and physical, whether it's Marshawn or Thomas Rawls or Chris Carson or people like that. And to me, it was just like watching all of the crap running backs that the Seahawks have had over the last 5-6 years since Marshawn, your Procysers and your Eddie Lacy's and your people like that who just didn't have anything. And unfortunately for DJ, I love his smile, love his personality, love his energy that he brings. But he kind of showed today that he's an emergency running back. He's like your 4th guy. He's somebody that if he ended up on a practice squad next year as opposed to on the roster and you could bring him up, then I don't think that'd be the worst thing in the world. And I certainly don't think anybody off that performance is going to be rushing to pull him off waivers if that's what ends up happening in the future. So hopefully Chris Carson comes back next week. Hopefully Carlos Hyde gets back. Hopefully Travis Homer's healthy. And Alex Collins is on the practice squad now. And I tell you something now, part of me was just thinking today, I'd just love to see Marshawn on the practice squad for a few of those short yardage runs. It would just good to see the beast out there again. But I don't know how interested Marshawn is being on a practice squad for a practice squad salary, waiting for his opportunity. I don't know. That feels very Marshawn to me. Olson and the tight ends, I just don't. Why are they spending $10 million on Greg Olson and Jacob Hollister? Now, Hollister's probably going to be gone by Tuesday, Robbie, because one way or another, he's probably going to get moved for whatever they can get to save salary for another pass rusher addition. Colby Parkinson's been called up to the roster now. They had, I think, 5 tight ends on the active roster today. And then they had Stephen Sullivan called up off the practice squad as well. So technically 6, even though one was rushing the passer. They're not going to have 5. They could cut Luke Wilson as well next week and have him on the practice squad to get extra guys on there. So Olson needs to show more. He's on $7 million. I was thinking that his role, if nothing else, would be a really dynamic pass-catching option and real complement to your receivers. He's not doing anything. And you're getting to the point where you're saying, why are you spending $7 million on this guy? Will Disley can do this role. Jacob Hollister can do this role. Colby Parkinson can do this role. If they're just going to be an afterthought on the offense, then don't spend $7 million on a guy next year. Just draft and develop guys like you have been doing. And the only other negative that I wanted to bring to the table, Robbie, and it is a big one, it is that 4th quarter defense. I mean, it makes me, it's the only real striking negative from the game is that, when it's 30 points to 7 and I'm sat there annoying my wife going, come on, more points. I want more points. I'm shouting, give me some more points. I want 50 points. I don't want them to score more than 7. And then they're driving and they're moving the ball and Nick Mullins is doing it. And I'm just sat there thinking, okay, right, fair enough. How much was that defensive performance on Jimmy G and how much was it on the Seahawks defense? Because if Jimmy G's not healthy and then as soon as he comes out the game, Nick Mullins in a quarter had 238 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and he put on 20 points, Robbie. I mean, it was as if it was the perfect Seahawks defense 2020 quarter that. And it nearly made it a tight game. At one point, it was edging towards, hang on a minute, this is 8 points and Seattle's got the ball. If they punt here and the Niners get a drive going, we could be looking at a tie game. I don't think it ever got to 8, did it? I think it got to 10. But if they'd got the 2 point, it would have been to 8. You see what I mean? It was getting too unnecessarily close. And I've got to say that pissed me off a little bit at the end.
Yeah, the prevent defense is not good. I don't know why we keep doing that. And like, it's like that play too far off, giving him too much time. And I don't think, I think Nick Mullins has a lot more moxie than Jimmy Garoppolo. I think he can stand in the pocket and take a hit, and he's not scared. So I think he's not afraid to deliver a striking pass. So, I mean, I'm not saying he's a better quarterback. I just think he's probably not as timid as maybe Jimmy is. And Jimmy's more of a rhythm quarterback, where Nick can probably, have get out of rhythm and then still strike hot. So, I'm not putting it on our defense. I really think just 238 yards in a quarter is just that dumb prevent defense. And then it felt like, though, but even when we did try to send 5 or 6, like we weren't getting home at that point. So I don't know, they were just blocking better, and maybe it was a sense of urgency by the 49ers or whatever, but I was always comfortable even when they got that, what they got, the 2-point conversion, and then it got overturned. Even then I was still fairly comfortable. I just didn't feel like it was their day. And so, I mean, it is frustrating to see. And yeah, I was getting a little pissed off too. Like, quit giving up chunk yards. Like, it's not necessary. Like, especially, in my head, Rob, actually all I was hearing was you just being pissed off about it. So I was like, come on, I want to have this conversation. But, it's just really frustrating that we keep doing this prevent defense. And like, I'm just get after them. Like, let's keep playing the way we were playing. It was working. I don't know why we stopped, but they got down the field really fast and then we're putting up points. It's not like they were, taking 6-7 minutes off the clock. I'd rather them have a long 6-7 minute drive, take a bunch of time off. If they score fine, but you're holding them from, getting there quickly and getting the ball back. So that was the frustrating part for me.
I just miss those days when, you'd see the backup quarterback come in, who's an undrafted free agent, and that's, you'd be thinking, who's going to get an interception? Is it going to be Richard Sherman? Is Earl going to get an interception? Is Cam going to get an interception? Who's going to get the pick? And then, you sort of, every time Nick Mullins was dropping back and you're thinking, he's going to throw it deep. He's going to throw it deep. What's going to happen here? Who's going to get the pick? And then he throws it deep and there's like some guy just stood, in the radius of 20 yards space, 40 yards downfield, catching it unchallenged. And you're thinking, what is this? Come on, it just would have been really good to have won this game like 30-7 or 40-7 or even if they got one touchdown, Robin, in like it's one of those drives that you're talking about, and really hammered the Niners. And look, a 37-27 defeat, it's still somewhat of a hammering, but it could have been even more of a hammering. So anyway, that's enough of that. A quick point on the defense in general, Robbie, because I was going to save this for another podcast, but I want to talk about it now. I want to get your thoughts on this. I just think that at the end of the season, there's going to be changes. For the people who are saying Ken Norton's got to go, he's not going to go during the season. That is not going to happen. But I imagine that when this season ends, if it doesn't end in a Super Bowl, and even if it does, I don't think Ken Norton's going to be the defensive coordinator anymore. Now, maybe Pete Carroll will turn to him and say, look, we want you to stay as part of the staff. I don't know if he would be interested in that or not, because clearly there's some value. And I think when Bobby Wagner got one of his sacks, he was pointing to the sideline going, that's for you, that's for you. And I think he was pointing at Ken. Or maybe he was pointing at the press box. I don't know. But whatever he was doing, I think there's a lot of love and respect for Ken Norton. And I think that they will be uncomfortable if the Seahawks do have to move on. But I think they will move on because of what's happened. When they get to the end of the season, I think whether they win a Super Bowl or not, I want to see Pete Carroll admit what this is. He is a great head coach and leader and motivator and culture setter. But he's no longer someone who I personally want handpicking his mates to be defensive coordinators. And I don't want Pete being in sole charge of this defense anymore. I think he's got to go and get somebody who, it has to be someone who's somewhat similar scheme. It can't be, you've drafted for the 4-3. You can't just go and look what the Cowboys are playing now, see what their defense is like, having got 4-3 personnel switching to a 3-4. You can't just switch it on and off like that. So they have to appoint someone. We're going to appoint someone with a track record in that scheme, or an up-and-comer who's a positional coach somewhere, and then trust them. And personally, I prefer it to be an ex-head coach. I want Pete Carroll to just say, I'm going to leave that to you. In the same kind of way that he's doing it with Russell and Brian Schottenham and Solari to look after the offense. And let Pete be a figurehead. Let Pete be the leader. Let Pete set the culture. Pete's the head of the table. He looks after everybody. He motivates everybody. It's his vision. It's whatever. But let somebody else who can be really hands-on with the defense and get this thing sorted. Because when I look at this staff, Robbie, there's a lot of family members and a lot of old guys from USC and a lot of people that Pete's very fond of. I'm just thinking that moving forward, it needs something. It needs a different approach because the defense has just been rubbish all year.
My take on this is, I think people really like Ken Norton Jr. I think, especially on the staff, the linebackers obviously love him for, specific reason. He was there, he's been a part for a long time, other than the 2 or 3 seasons that he was in Oakland with the Raiders. So, I hear Dan Quinn's name thrown out there a lot. I mean, I don't think that's going to happen right now. There will be no change right now until the offseason. And I think there probably will be a change regardless if we win a Super Bowl or not. I agree. I think the thing that it really comes down to is Pete's ability to separate, relationally from those guys. I mean, look how long it took him to get rid of Darrell Bevell and Tom Cable and those guys. Like, I don't know if this will be the season that it actually is, because he is really loyal to his people. And so, I could see him being interested in maybe bringing in Dan Quinn back or something. I don't think he's going to go out and get some up and coming young guy to do it, but I could be wrong. I just don't see that being realistic.
I think you're probably right. I just wonder if there's, and I think Dan Quinn of all the candidates is probably most likely. And look, we're getting ahead of ourselves. This is something we can talk about down the line. But I just like to see a different approach. Pete's, I think, is the right man to be the head coach, and I'm just not sure he's the right man to have control the defense anymore with his long-term linebackers coach at USC sort of coordinating things. I think there needs to be maybe a slightly different approach going forward. Right. Let's just sort of look at the state of play now, Robbie, in terms of the NFC West. So the Rams lose today, and I'm having a real hard time working out what the Rams are, because I've seen the Rams play fantastically well and hammer teams. I've seen the Rams scrape to wins against bad teams, and we see them just get in their own way. I mean, Jared Goff was turning the ball over so much today. I don't really know what to make of them. And then you've got the Niners, who, a couple of weeks ago, I was on this podcast talking about, God, I hope they don't pick in the top 5. And then they win a couple of games, and you think, yeah, they're pretty good still. And then watching them today with Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm thinking, no, that is what they were a couple of weeks ago. That is basically who they are. It's hard to get an answer for them. And then you've got the Cardinals, who, for the most part last week, looked pretty crap in the first half against the Seahawks. Yeah, won because the Seahawks blew it. And they've lost to the Lions, and they've lost to somebody else who isn't particularly good either. And I just find it, I don't really know. And I suspect if you were a fan of the Rams, Niners, or Cardinals, you might be looking at the Seahawks and saying, they've got lots of flaws as well, and they can be streaky. And the whole division seems very strange.
Well, when you play division opponents, it's always close. It's always hard. I mean, you look at the Vikings and Packers today. You wouldn't have guessed that the Vikings would have come out and put a whooping to the Packers, but they did, and they were handling them fairly well, it seemed like, and they started catching back up in the fourth quarter. But it's just that division, right? And I mean, you start looking at our division alone, and you think, man, every one of these teams could make the playoffs. Like, I think they're all good enough to make the playoffs, but we all have flaws. Every team has glaring needs on their position. And the nice thing about the Seahawks, because we've got things coming, like we've got Carlos Dunlap coming in. He should be able to play next week. Hopefully Jamal Adams is able to play next week. You've got guys getting hopefully healthier and coming back, and hopefully Ugo Amadi is able to play. But you start looking at it and you're like, okay, well, we've got this DJ Reed. You want to see him get some more snaps, and like, I'm okay if Benson Mayo doesn't play 97% of the snaps and he only plays 50. Start getting Alton Robinson more snaps. We've got things coming that I think can really help this defense going forward. And, you start looking at the, with the trade deadline, who are the Niners going to trade for? The Rams, the Cardinals, like who are they going to go out to get? So you got to keep an eye on that. But I really feel like, we're a player away from being, if not average, better than average defense that could get better as the season goes on. And this is the whole state of the NFL right now. It just feels like there's not a lot of defense and it's all offensive based. So it's tough to say right now. I mean, every team has flaws, and I mean, yeah, you're right. The Rams, it's crazy how the 3 losses they've had. Like, I mean, they could easily just like the Seahawks, but they could easily be, 4-4 like the Niners instead. And It's just tough, mate. It's tough to say. Right now, the Cardinals are the team that scares me the most. And I don't know. It's not just because they beat us. It's just because like they've beaten the 49ers already. They're up and coming. They're starting to get that swagger, and I just don't think we need them to get a loss like and come back down to reality. But if they start keeping that momentum up and getting that swagger going, you don't want them to, ride that momentum and keep going.
Well, that means, I mean, if the Seahawks just make one of all the mistakes the Seahawks made, and you could, if you were to write them out on your arm, they'd be like, there's mistake 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There was about 10 mistakes the Seahawks made throughout the Arizona game, and if one of them doesn't go Arizona's way, then they lose that game, and they're 4-3. And the Seahawks are in control of the division. I mean, they're already leading the division now, but they've been in complete control of the NFC West. So I'm not sure. I mean, the Cardinals, and they've lost Chandler Jones. There's just a lot about them that just, I don't fear them. I mean, even though they've beaten the Seahawks, and Seattle are going to have to beat them in Seattle now, which they rarely do. I just don't particularly fear them. As I fear Shanahan. Kyler Murray's amazing. I fear Shanahan a little bit, and McVay, obviously. But we'll see. And the rest of the NFC, I mean, the target surely now, Robbie, is if the Seahawks can get to 6-1 with the defense playing this badly, and they're hopefully going to get guys back. Jamal Adams, Pete Carroll's already said, is going to be back next week. Carlos Dunlap will be eligible to play next week, and presumably he will come straight back in. You would hope that Snacks Harrison is close soon. I mean, pretty soon I'm going to start wondering if they've just got him in for a diet program that Pete Carroll's running, so that he can show, look, I got this guy from 400 pounds to 200 in 3 months. That maybe Carroll's got like a side project going with some diet or something. And if that's the case, maybe they should just send him back to Detroit and he can go on the keto for a couple of weeks. I don't know. But either way, he should be back soon. Shaquille Griffin hopefully will come back, even though he's not playing particularly well. Benson Mayowa, you've got a bunch of guys that if they get them back, Robbie, if they can get to 6-1 with this horrendous horror show of a defense, if Bobby Wagner can actually play this way and play pissed off every week, then they've got to be looking at this. At who really is because you look in the AFC, you've got the Chiefs looking great, the Steelers are looking great, the Ravens will always be dangerous, and then in the NFC, there's not really that team, is there? There's not that one team. The Saints won today. Saints will be a difficult out. Packers will be a difficult out. But then, you're talking about the Vikings. I'd almost fear them as an opponent as much as any of the others, because you never know what you're quite going to get from them. And they've handled the Seahawks and the Packers on the road and should have won both games. But they're not going to be in the playoffs because they're already, 2-5. Presumably they're not going to be in the playoffs. But they to me, are just as dangerous as anybody else. And yet they're not even going to be there in the postseason.
Yeah, you look at the Vikings, and you're right. I mean, 2-5 in that division. You've got the Bears and the Packers leading, and who knows where Detroit's at? They're 3-4. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the Vikings are a team that always seem to play us well, so you definitely don't want to play them. There's going to be difficult. You go Tampa Bay, they'd be a tough opponent. You got them. They're right there tied with the Saints for the first, the first spot in that division in the NFC South. So I mean, it's going to be tough. And I thought it was the Packers really that was going to be that team, and then you see them lose today, and you just realize there's no front runner. We're actually the front runner at 6-1, which I feel good about. As I said, we have the number 1 seed going forward as long as we can just keep winning where we're supposed to win. Next week's going to be a tough game. I don't think Buffalo is an easy out. I think that's going to be a tough game as well.
Yeah, I forgot about the Buccaneers. I don't know why I did that. I mean, I suppose they are the team, aren't they? But then, even then, they lost to the Bears. They were hammered by the Saints. I still feel like I need to see a little bit more from them. I mean, they're kind of like the all-star team at the moment, aren't they? And Brady's he's got so many weapons, but he's well into his 40s now, and it feels like if you could get pressure on him. And the Bucs O-line's not particularly amazing, then you could cause him trouble. So they're perhaps the team that you sort of everybody's kind of looking at the minute. But it's there. They may never get a better chance, Robbie. There's nobody really that stands out like in previous years where you go, woof, like the Niners last year, or the Saints last year, or Atlanta in 2016. I want to say, was it 2016 when they got to the Super Bowl, or the Panthers in 2015? There isn't that team that scares you to death. So, the Seahawks have got to try and make sure that their team. We'll talk a bit more about Buffalo in the week in the preview podcast. I mean, for me, they're a tough team, but I don't know. I kind of just they struggled a bit again today. And if you can force Josh Allen to be patient, then maybe you can have some success there. We'll talk about that in midweek. One of the other things we'll also be talking about when we speak in midweek, Robbie, is hopefully another trade by the Seahawks. Trade deadline is on Tuesday. We won't speak again until it's passed, unless anything major happens. So, what are you hoping for? There was a bit of rumor and speculation out there that Ryan Anderson and Pat McKinley seem to be the two names that get mentioned the most. Ryan Kerrigan is apparently asking for a trade, or is at least open to the possibility of a trade. I think the report that he's requested a trade has been dismissed and denied by Kerrigan, but ultimately he wants to go. The Washington is saying no, we want to keep him. Whitney Merciless is another name, but again, might cost too much. JJ Watson, I'm trying to think of other players that have been linked. I mean, when you actually, so let me sort of say, how excited would you be about Pat McKinley or Ryan Anderson and presumably a Jacob Hollister trade in order to get them in? Would you think is that worth doing? Is it worth bringing them in? Is Dunlap enough? How do you feel about it?
Well, Dunlap's not enough. We need more. And I've been saying we're not done. And I know we're going to go out and try to get somebody else. And any one of those players that you mentioned, I would be okay with going out. And I mean, they don't have to be perfect. We're not going to go out and get the perfect guy for our system that's going to be amazing. But as long as they can come in and help this pass rush and get a little more pressure on the quarterback, that's all we need. I mean, I'm getting tired of the games where, they drop back 50 times and they got no QB hits. Like today was a good example. We finally got after the quarterback. Let's keep that up. And now we have some actual players coming that can help us. And, hopefully this is also eye-opening that, you need to give some of these younger guys like Alton Robinson a chance to keep playing. Like, don't just give him 7 snaps and letting Benson Mayowa play 97% of the time. And it's not a knock on Mayowa. Like, I don't think he should be playing that much. He's a rotational pass rusher. Bring somebody else in to help him and help this defensive line. Like, I think Tack would be fine. Ryan Anderson would be fine. Obviously I was clamoring for Kerrigan earlier, but I don't know how realistic that is with this cap hit and all that stuff. And I know you say no to JJ Watt. And I mean, clearly that there's probably no way that could ever happen, but I also didn't think the Dunlap thing would ever happen. I mean, I said it, like, go get it, but Cincinnati hardly ever trades ever. And so, especially in the season, and they did it. So until Tuesday comes and goes, I'm not putting anything off the table. Like JJ Watt would obviously be incredible, not realistic, but and I also don't think who was the guy that you mentioned, Whitney. I just don't think that's gonna happen. He carries a huge price tag as well, so I don't think that one would be realistic. I think you're looking at someone like Tack for probably a 6th-round pick or something. Get him in, and he's got the intangibles that they like. Let's see if he can help out.
Yeah, I think that the main reason why I think McKinley and Anderson are most likely, Robbie, is because firstly the salary. They're both on rookie contracts that are expiring, so they're going to cost you a few $100,000. You can fit. They might be able to fit that under now. I'm not completely on top of what the cap space is, but if they move Jacob Hollister and get a 5th round, about, let's say, then that will create enough room to bring in Anderson and McKinley until the end of the season. McKinley would offer you that speed that maybe you're lacking off the edge, although Alton Robinson played well today. And it's just a little mix up there. It's another option that you've got. Ryan Anderson's a little bit more different. For me, he's better suited to almost play a bit of linebacker or something. But at Alabama, he came screaming off the edge. He's not the fastest. He's not the most athletic. He's not got the length that Seattle likes. But, for the price tag, bring him in. I imagine the pick compensation, it may even be a throwaway. It could be a 7th. It could be something like that. It could be a future pick. It could be anything. I mean, I don't think Washington have any plans to keep Anderson and Atlanta. I mean, they're basically saying they're going to be gone at the end of the season. Let's just get rid of them, get something for them now, and move on, save a bit of money. So looks like they're the most likely, but it could be an interesting 48 hours as we find out up to that trade deadline. I hope there's some deals around the league, Robbie. It's always more interesting with the stuff going on. Nothing more exciting than that first day of free agency when there's like all the players are signing for new teams and all that excitement. So let's get a few deals. Let's see a few deals this week.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be some deals. The one thing I'm going to say, though, is if we don't make another trade, let's say we're going to go out and we try and we don't get anything, we'll have the salary cap. If we do trade, Jacob Hollister. We will have the salary cap to match whatever Clay Matthews is getting paid right now uh, by the Rams. And, I think there could be a realistic possibility at that point we go out and sign Clay after the trade deadline and give him the money that he wants, like a $4 million deal. So he's enough to get him back in to play for the rest of the season. That's something that could be a realistic possibility as well. So keep that in mind as well going forward. I think that could be something, if nothing happens, I think that's something we could probably target. And I could also see us maybe taking a quick swipe at Cameron Wake just to see what he's got left in the tank. If anything, he's another rotational guy, 39, but I mean, age didn't seem to bother him last year. So
I'll have a bit of Clay Matthews. I just, it's that third down, isn't it? It's getting off the field at third down, third and long. And there's one thing that Clay Matthews can probably still do at this age, and maybe Cameron Wake as well, although he is 39 in January. He's coming off the edge on third down and trying to help you get off the field. Right. Fantastic win. I know we've talked a lot about trades and coaching futures and stuff like that. Worth reaffirming what a great win this was, however banged up the Niners were. For the Seahawks to be, and the Niners fans will use that excuse. They will say, this was a banged up 49ers team and whatever. Well, the Seahawks were very banged up as well. They were missing so many key players. It was a great win. I was very happy to say once again that I was very wrong, and the Seahawks were very right on the day, and they moved to 6-1 and Buffalo next week. Hopefully the weather's good, like it was today in Seattle, and they will head to 7-1 ahead of, I think it's the Rams after that. So a couple of big games coming up for the Seahawks on this tough stretch, which we always kind of felt they needed to get at least 3-2 out of, and they're now 1-1. These 3 more games to play. Right, that's as far as we go. Over to SeahawksDraftBlog.com if you want the instant reaction blog post to go with this podcast. We'll be back in the week reflecting on anything that happened in the trade deadline and to look ahead to Buffalo. Share and like the podcast. Spread the word. Great Seahawks win. We'll see you in the week.